Super Mario 64. Am I right? And that DS version? Yeah, people don't play this one much anymore, but in my opinion, it's actually the better game. Now, why on earth would I like the DS version more? The D-pad, this thing is so nice for 3D platformers. Okay, I do actually have good reasons, which I'll get to here in a moment. I'd like to explain why this game is not only better, but also deader. First off, let's go over the whole me being a total idiot thing. Yes, this is better than this. But, no, shut up, you're wrong. Okay, sorry. This is why I think it's better. Super Mario 64 DS was a pretty big deal when it released. It would have been cool just to get a remastered version of Mario 64 on a handheld device. But Nintendo did a full remake, adding 5 levels, 30 stars, 3 characters, a multiplayer mode, and a minigame collection. All of those things being completely irrelevant next to the freaking minigame collection. I think my playtime with this game is 50-50 split between the actual game and the rec room. Okay, so it added some cool stuff. But when people talk bad about the DS version, they're mostly talking about a few specific problems. One of the biggest ones being the controls. For the most part, this game actually controls better on the DS, because the DS is a more intuitive controller. See, the DS is in the not the N64 controller category of controllers, which is more than the N64 controller can say. Plus, the camera system just overall works better in this game. But there's one huge issue. No stick. This gives Mario 8 degrees of movement, or a little over 2% of the range that he has on the N64 version. While those numbers make this game sound unplayable, it's hardly noticeable for casual players. But if you're really used to the N64 version's precision, this can get pretty frustrating. Like I said earlier, this game added 3 characters. Great, right? You're probably gonna play Mario. I've seen people argue that Luigi is an overpowered character, and that there's virtually no reason to play Wario. While the Wario thing is completely true, I would argue that Luigi's inability to wall jump locks him under a pretty low skill ceiling. He's a very approachable character for beginners, but you'll probably stick with Mario since he's more versatile overall. And Yoshi, you know, he's alright. I have seen people complain about the fact that you start the game as Yoshi, not Mario. Where? This game also just lacks some of the little things that made the original what it was. Specifically the glitches. Many of these glitches are just part of the game's identity now, with speedrunnings popularizing things like the backwards long jump. Almost all of these glitches are removed from the DS version, making it a more polished game, but also a total bummer. It does have its own interesting glitches, but they don't matter, because he doesn't go backwards and go. But despite all of this, it's still better. The enormous amount of content added all fits so well, it's almost like this is how the game was originally meant to be. This game looks leagues better and runs smoother while being on a weaker console. It utilizes the second screen well, and it's all playable on the go. The Rec Room is a fantastic time waster, the multiplayer is good fun with friends, and with the core disadvantage being a barely noticeable decrease in range of movement, the good easily outweighs the bad. This should be the definitive way to play Super Mario 64. But it just isn't. What makes this game so much deader these days? Oh. Yeah, apparently this game released for the DS. The DS is one of those gaming consoles that you can hold. Handheld consoles have always been a more casual means of playing games. After all, real games are played on big screens that don't move. If you're serious about a game, why would you play it on a wimpy little handheld? But basically everybody who plays video games plays them casually, so this was a really good way to get a new generation into Super Mario 64. And I would argue that most of the people who grew up on the DS version never would have experienced it otherwise. I first played the DS version around 2012, which was quite a while after it released. But even in 2012, there was absolutely no way that I was going to pick up some ancient console with a borderline esoteric controller just so that I could play a Mario game that looked about as pretty as Mario 64. But the DS remaster got me to play that game all the way through. I really do believe that this is the perfect remaster. But no matter how many times I say that, there still aren't as many people playing this game today as there are playing that ugly old N64 version. Well, first off, let's look at the legacy of these games. When Super Mario 64 released, not only was it the first 3D Mario game, but it was pretty much the first 3D platformer. And with the primitive, garbage-level technology of their time, they managed to make a game that today still stands as a masterpiece platformer. Take any other game that pioneered a genre like that and put it against the modern titles of the genre. They just don't hold up. Super Mario 64 holds its own against modern competitors in the genre that it created, and that's just impressive. Super Mario 64 DS? Yeah, it added some things or something. The DS version clearly didn't have the impact like the N64 version did, which puts the N64 version over the DS version in some people's minds. But ultimately, impact and innovation don't affect how good a game is. They will, however, affect that game's staying power. But that can't be the only thing keeping people from playing this game today. Odds are you own a device with Super Mario 64 available on it. N64, Wii, Wii U, Switch. Every Nintendo home console since the N64, with the exception of the GameCube, gets this game on it. But 64DS is pretty much only on DS consoles. Oh, we got it on the Wii U too. Yay. But why doesn't it get ported around like the original does? Oh no. This game was remade with a dual screen interface, which is why it only ever re-released on the Wii U, Nintendo's other dual screened console. I do believe, however, that this game can be recompressed onto one screen. The touchscreen features can be removed, or just moved to the Switch's touchscreen, and the map could probably find a place somewhere on the screen without being distracting, but still being visible enough to be useful. Maybe. And this is all assuming that Nintendo would remaster a now unpopular DS remake of an N64 game that they already have on the Switch. So a pretty big reason for 64DS's lack of longevity is due to it being released for an overall pretty restrictive system. The lack of an analog stick meant that more serious players wouldn't want to stick around, or stay around, like they did with the original. And it was partially designed around having two screens, which means it's kinda stuck on the DS. Or you can emulate it. You ever tried emulating a DS game? Okay, so you're playing with an Xbox controller most of the time, but when you want to use the touchscreen, you've got to stop using the Xbox controller and use your mouse to click stuff. I really like constantly having to do this all the time to save and continue after every star. A port to the Switch could not possibly be worse than this. I do think that this game could see a revival at some point, but it will never have the staying power of the original. I'd just like to see more people appreciate this game and its ROM hacks and speedruns and stuff. There's really a lot to like about this game, especially Waluigi. DS version's better, case closed.